I'm an instructional designer with MeTEOR Education, and we're an educational solutions company. You've probably heard of interior designers, but I'm actually an instructional designer. My background is in education. I was in a school district for 18 years, and I um, was started out as a reading recovery teacher, and then was a classroom teacher in a self-contained classroom, and then began to work with English language learners, and then became a district administrator working with our English language learners in programs like dual language, bilingual, and our ESL programs. Our company, MeTEOR Education, we're really active on Twitter, and I have my own Twitter account as well, and I'm very active on Twitter. And so if you'd like to hear some stories or see some of the schools we partner with, please feel free to check us out on Twitter. We'd love to have you follow along. The walkaways I've designed for this particular webinar are that hopefully by the end of it, you will be able to understand through some of the research that I'll share with you to help showcase and understand why spaces for these collaborative, innovative spaces support your instructional goals for your students. And then also, I really hope that you'll be able to take away some of the really cool elements as we explore different intentional design pieces for these beautiful, collaborative, innovative spaces. So here is an image of a space called a Collaboratory. And so we're going to be talking about these really cool spaces such as FabLabs, Makerspaces, Collaboratories that we're seeing pop up into schools quite often. And one of the things too that we've seen patterns of is that when schools design and put in these really cool, creative, innovative spaces, the branding for it is very important. There's research that shows that students tend to gravitate more towards spaces that are branded with a name that sparks that authentic inquiry. So whether you choose to call your innovative space a makerspace, an idea lab, those are all things to consider as you're building out and thinking about your space and actually the actions you hope to see students doing within that space. So a lot of times we hear educators say, why? Why put spaces like this in? Why should we change? Why are we investing all of these dollars into spaces for students just to go play? And actually, we'll look at some research that shows that that's actually not the case. But why put in spaces as collaborative and creative and innovative as the spaces we're going to look at? Well, as we are shifting into education 4.0, we know that the classroom spaces, the ecosystems are needing to adjust. When we look back at images that we see here, such as from education 2.0, the spaces beautifully aligned with where students were going to go in their future. So students were sitting in rows and desks and listening, which was where they were going to be going with their future endeavors. So at the time, the schools beautifully supported the career path for students. But we know that that's changed and is continuing to change. And I'm sure the statistics and the data up here on the screen doesn't surprise you when we look at things like that top one, where students could have as many as 40 different jobs and 10 different career paths. That probably doesn't surprise you. There's a lot of research out there on millennials. There's not a lot with regards to Gen Z because they're the ones still in our classrooms now. But as you know, January 1, 2018 is when the workforce became dominated by millennials. And so it's very interesting. We're starting to see the domino effects of what happens now that the millennials are in the workforce, because they think of their careers in a very different way than my father's generation, for sure, where you would go to work for a company for 25 to 30 years. That's not what we're seeing with millennials, and that's not what they're saying they want in life. And they have options. The middle statistic is very interesting, showing that 65% of our students in primary grades right now will ultimately end up working in a job that doesn't even exist yet. And then the last statistic down there, that 85% of jobs that will exist in 2030 haven't even been invented yet. And for some, that can be very scary. For me, that's very inspiring because the students in our classrooms now, I hope that they are having opportunities in schools to be able to hopefully one day find that cure for cancer, or find a solution for cleaning our oceans, or any type of problem they hope to tackle when they grow up. As you know, the competitive educational landscape in Florida is quite wide, and so when we look at statistics like what we see here on this infogram, 46% of students within the whole state of Florida have taken on their and love having that choice to be able to choose whatever school it is they want to, or if they want to stay at home and take online courses. There's so many options now for students and families out there now. And so when we take a look at this image from Redefined Online, it helps us to see that, gosh, a lot of students and families want to take advantage of being able to choose where they want to go to school. And so as families are deciding and researching and looking and trying to make that choice that's the right fit for their children, it's important to think about the programs you can put into your school that will help recruit families, because a lot of research shows that what parents tend to care about is not necessarily the academics, which they do of course, but that their students are engaged in school, and putting in beautiful spaces that support the creativity for students is an important element that parents care about as well. So whether you choose to, like this image here on the left, put in a makerspace that's attached to your library media center, that's a great idea for utilizing space. Or this image on the right, if you have the ability and the space to put in a true makerspace or a FabLab like what we see there, those are programs that families and particularly students tend to gravitate towards and want to be able to go to. As our classroom ecos are changing and we're preparing students for a very different future than probably what most of us have had, it's important to think about what are other spaces we can put into our school that help to showcase the changes that are happening in the world, and to be able to prepare our students for whatever endeavor it is they choose to take on. You may remember this cover from back in 2010. I know I do. Whenever we began to see that crisis with creativity in schools, as more and more has come out about focusing on the academics and testing, that creativity really got pulled out of schools. And so because of covers like this and this issue being brought back to the forefront within education, we're starting to see that building back in of creativity is starting to happen in our schools, which is really exciting, especially when we look at information like what's on the screen now, that creativity is so desperately needed to be successful with whatever a student chooses to do with his or her life once they get out of high school. So this information on the screen actually comes from the World Economic Forum, and then came down to a more granular level with the West Economic Forum. But this information comes from the leaders that gather in Davos. And so, heads of the military, heads of universities, CEOs of companies. And what this information shows are the skills that are needed when a student graduates from high school, whether they choose to go to the military or to college or to get a 2-year certificate or any certificate, or go out into the workforce. No matter what you choose to do, these are the skills that you will need to be successful. And so in 2015, the top skill that students needed to be successful when they graduated was complex problem solving. Well, for our 2020 high school graduates, it's still the same. Complex problem solving is still the top skill needed. But what I think is so interesting is that from 2015, creativity jumped from 10 out of 10 to 3 out of 10. And so that's why we're seeing a lot of creative spaces and things like Genius Hour and passion project times injected back into schools to help foster that creativity within our students. Because as we know, their future is very different. They're going to need to be creative to be able to thrive in the world. I think what else is interesting, just one other little nugget I'm going to throw out there with this slide, is that emotional intelligence is now on the list. It's actually up pretty high, 6 out of 10. It's never been on a list before. But I think that when we take a look at like a statistic, like the reason why most people got fired from their jobs in 2018 is because they couldn't get along with people. That explains why emotional intelligence is on this list. It's also why we're seeing trends in education right now with SEL, the social emotional learning programs going into schools. Um, and hopefully that's also another great reason why we're allowing and fostering students to collaborate more, so that when they're in school and they're having issues with conflict and they're having to learn how to manage their emotions, they have an adult there to help them be able to resolve that conflict, so that whenever they grow up, they have the emotional stability to be able to do whatever it is they choose to do in life and never have to worry about being fired, because they know how to manage their emotions. I also think it's interesting that cognitive flexibility is now on this list. It never has been before, but if you're going to have 40 different jobs throughout your life, you probably need to be very flexible in your cognitive thinking. This is an activity I love to do with teachers, because a lot of times whenever we put in these beautiful collaborative, creative, innovative spaces like fab labs, idea labs, collaboratories, a lot of times teachers may struggle to think about how to facilitate this and understand, why do we need spaces like this. But doing an activity like this, where showcasing some future employment opportunities, and then doing a little bit of research and showing them what these professions actually do, what these career paths do. What does a nanomedic do? What does the body part maker do? What do nostalgists do? And then at the end of the activity, I have teachers go onto monsterjobs.com or indeed.com. And what they begin to realize is that these are not future employment opportunities. These are current employment opportunities. There are companies out there now that are recruiting people to be able to do these jobs. And so it helps to create that sense of urgency for our teachers to understand that the world is changing very quickly, and that the employment opportunities that our students are going to have are so different. And the need to be creative is actually really important. And that's why building in time to be creative is really important for our students. About 9 years ago, we started seeing a huge trend within high school counselors, that when they started to work with the juniors and seniors to help guide them onto what it is they wanted to do when they graduated, huge populations of students were saying, I have no idea what I want to do when I graduate. And so again, that's when we started seeing these creative elements put back into schools, like Genius Hour, maybe on a weekly basis, or passion project time, where students could actually do some research and find out what it is they're passionate about, and then be able to present that information to their class or to an authentic audience. And help, those things tend to help students out, because by the time they get to high school and they're thinking, gosh, I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian, but once I got to research it and learn about it for passion project time, that's not at all what I want to do. I want to be able to do that for students, so that they have a better understanding of what it is they want to do when they grow up, what problems they want to solve for the world, so that they can go out there and thrive with whatever they choose to do in the world. So spaces like Makerspaces, of course, that have this huge momentum across the world, are great spaces to put in to support passion project time or Genius Hour, or even if it's time for students to come in and rotate through, to be able to get hands-on and experiment and try new things, so that they're experiencing um, um, with different tasks and units of study, and hopefully being able to present to authentic audiences, and really being able to have that real world connection. This is just some information about how quickly and drastically the influx of maker spaces has been, not just within the United States, but also across the world. When we start to think about designing spaces like maker spaces and fab labs, it's important to consider getting information from your students and your staff as to what it is they want to be able to do in that space, and what they want that space to look like, and be able to hold, where they can sit, where they can stand. Here at MeTEOR, we obviously work a lot with environments, but also work with a lot of educators and administrators. But we also like to get information from our students, the ultimate user, of course. And so every survey we give to elementary students, there's a big pattern we see where they tend to say they want their spaces to feel like home. They want want it to have rugs, have soft seating, have lots of choices for seating, to be able to just be very homey, so they can move and sit wherever they want to. What's interesting is the survey results we get from secondary students tends to say that they want it to look like what they see on TV and in the movies, like with the Apple offices, the Google offices, the Facebook offices, Instagram offices. They want it to be very clean, and they always say they want it to have cool lights. I don't know why, but they love having cool lights in there. And so I think spaces like the two that we're looking at here on the screen really show a great representation as to what it is we hear that students say they want to see within their learning environments. As you start to think about what type of Makerspace or FabLab or Collaboratory or Idea Lab you might be thinking about putting into your school, here at MeTEOR, we're very passionate about helping you be intentional with what it is you put into your space. In education, I know it's very rare that we have the funding to be able to put in spaces or modernize anything. So we care very much about helping you be intentional with what you put in. And so whether you have an entire classroom like what we see on the left, where you could even put in garage doors, which would be such a blessing and then students could actually go out if they're interested in the gardening club, or if you have a farm to table initiative at your school, or a rocket club where students can get hands-on and then go out and actually apply what they're learning about. So thinking about exactly what it is you hope to see students doing, that's what we want to help align you with for the environment. Or as we look at the image on the right, if you don't have a lot of space, but if you have wall space where we could put pegboards up to hold lots of tools, and then put in tabletops with some fun, flexible seating where students can spread all of their things out so they can get hands-on and messy and creative. Just thinking about exactly what it is you have space for and what you hope to see students doing within that space. We're seeing trends in a lot of rural school districts where they're using mobile vans and mobile buses to be able to get maker spaces or innovation labs out to the students. So again, they're not being denied any opportunities for having the creativity within a maker space or a fab lab. We're also seeing schools use carts, like we're seeing there on the right, where teachers could come and check out the Makerspace carts and bring them into the classroom, or pull them out into the library media center and spread them out, because there might be more floor space for students to get down and get hands-on and be making things, whether they're sewing or whether they're coding robots. But being able to have those so that they're flexible to be able to go anywhere you want to, we're seeing those pop up in a lot of schools as well. This statistic is incredible to me, showcasing the power of classroom ecosystems. So the classroom ecosystems that mirror real world collaboration, that's the key element, are found to increase student learning by at least 20%. So these beautiful classroom ecosystems where hopefully students are collaborating with one another and the teachers are able to foster that collaboration, being able to actually go through experiences like that increases our students' learning quite dramatically. So as we think about what type of spaces we want to put in and allow the students and foster the students' ability to collaborate and innovate and design, it's very important, again, to think about what are the actions you want to see your educator doing in that space and the actions for the students in that space. And so, as I was saying before, we're very passionate about helping you intentionally think about that. So no dollars wasted, no time is wasted on putting in pieces that aren't going to support your ultimate goals. And so one thing I would recommend you do if you're considering putting in a space like this is make a list of what are a list of verbs that sum up and capture what you want to see your students doing in that space, whether it's walking, reading, presenting, listening, going on virtual field trips, using virtual reality goggles, working with robots, ideating with a team. Make that list and then make another list as well. Again, that captures verbs, but this time, what do you hope to see the educator doing in that space? Do you hope he or she is walking around, offering workshops, showing virtual field trips, um, writing on boards, showcasing students' work, giving feedback to students. Make that list, because then that helps think about which furniture solutions will support those actions. So when we look at a space like this Makerspace, if it's that you want students to be creating presentations, a piece like that D-shaped table down there that has a computer monitor on it would be a great solution, because as kids are creating something, an ultimate presentation, maybe a visual representation of something that they're going to showcase to an authentic audience, that's a great place for students to be able to call their teammates over and say, hey guys, I've got to make this presentation perfect. Would you guys give me some feedback? I'm going to project it up here onto this monitor, so give me some feedback, please. So that's a great solution if those are some things you're wanting to see your students doing. Also, again, I'm pretty passionate about the English language learners, but as our English language learners are trying to absorb the information and the language as well, that D-shaped table with a monitor can be a great place for you to call students over to have a workshop and show a little video to help get into that background knowledge for them, to help them start to feel comfortable learning about the new things they're going to be learning about. If you're hoping to have students be able to sit at desks, we see a great solution where there are desks that can be pulled apart or pushed together. There's also tabletops. So all things to consider when you are thinking about designing a really creative, cool space like this. If you're thinking about putting in a FabLab, you might consider something like long tabletops so kids can spread things out. You might consider the butcher block to go on top to be really sturdy and industrial for the students. If you love the idea of dry erase boards being in there, but you want to inject a little bit of color, there's a solution for that. There are dry erase boards that come in a multitude of colors. Whether you want students to be sitting in chairs or on stools, or if you want there to be tables that are taller so students can stand or sit in taller stools, all things to keep in mind as to what you hope your students can experience in these spaces. If you're putting in a space like a Collaboratory and you want students to be able to create videos, presentations that they can use their technology. So instead of a green screen, you might have a blue screen, but having things set up so that students can easily achieve the goals you hope that they can achieve. This is a space we designed, and the school really wanted the students to be able to be very flexible and move around to be able to code for robotics classes. And so that's why we have the computers on the side, so students could go over, code a little bit, and then go to the table and make sure that the code they put in worked, so that ultimately when the students didn't code so much and get all the way to the end and realize there was one mistake in their code, they have to go back and redo everything. So just to be able to really work and apply and work and apply, so students could be moving all over so that they could reach their ultimate goal of being in a robotics contest, which is why you see down here on the carpet that board that holds that's competition size for students to actually then try out the robots the way they program them so that they feel comfortable going to the robotics competition. So again, you can see back in the background, there's lots of places for students to sit. There's some taller stools, some taller desks that hold a lot of storage for students to keep all their things, and then rolly chairs for them to sit in when they're at the computer, or come down to the carpet and sit on a nice soft seating and the mobile stools. If you're thinking about a Collaboratory or an idea lab like this, it's really a nice idea to put in some soft seating options. Students do say on surveys that they love and want more soft seating. So if you can put in elements like that where kids can just very easily pull it together, if their team wants to collaborate on a project and then showcase, then be able to go back to their table and showcase their learning and practice what they just talked about with their team. Dry erase walls. Teachers tell us that they cannot have enough dry erase walls. So if we put those in where they can capture ideas and showcase when workshops will be held, or students can go over there and just organically start to brainstorm and ideate together and capture their thoughts, it's a great idea. Another thing to consider is what the teacher's doing, like I mentioned in before, but what type of furniture do you want for the teacher to have? So in this space, we see in the center there is a smaller desk and then a taller mobile podium for the teacher to keep his or her computer on or iPad on and be able to move around because it's mobile. So thinking about what you want for your educator to have is important because there are a lot of solutions that are out there to support what you want them to be doing. Here's another makerspace that um, was, they were very lucky at the school to be able to have lots of natural lighting and the garage doors. This school had a very large rocket club, and so the students loved to be able to go outside after they had just made it and practice it and tried it and go out and practice with the rockets. One thing I do want to point out in here that's very important when you consider putting in a creative, innovative space like this is storage. Because a lot of times students and classes are rotating through, or they're coming down maybe just on their own when it's genius hour time or passion project time. And so they just have a little bit of time to work on their project and their creation, and then they need to store it somewhere. So thinking about elements like that, maybe what you already have built into a room, or if you need mobile storage to hold those pieces so students can put it there, keep it there, and come back to it. But it's very important to think about storage in beautiful spaces like this. As we go through again, I just want to remind you, if you have any questions or any comments, please feel free to go down to the bottom there and use the chat button. This is a makerspace we worked on. One other element you'll hear us ask about if we should partner together is, what do you want the message to be? Whenever these students walk into this space, what is the message you want them to get from this? Do you want them to walk in and feel that this space is for creativity, or this space is going to foster collaboration, or in this space we're going to do a lot of test taking, or in this space we're going to do a lot of listening? I don't know, but every message every space sends a message. And you'll hear us say at MeTEOR all the time that the environment is never neutral. It always sends a message. And so this school had money to do one space, and they really wanted it to be very innovative and showcase that they were starting to make their spaces more innovative. And so they wanted this one to have a real wow factor. And they wanted it to be a makerspace that students could collaborate in and just feel really free being creative. And so our interior designers are incredible, and so put a design together, and they were like, no, we need more color. And so we went back and added in these really fun puzzle piece stools down there at the bottom for students to gather, pull back together if they want to collaborate, or pulling off to the side if they need to work by themselves and just really get, head down, focus on the task. That's great. You'll see also down there, there's a little table that's very short and low to the ground. Students love tables like that. They love to sit on the ground. And it actually even has a dry erase tabletop on it. So students, if they wanted to come together with their team, pull out their dry erase marker and just start to ideate on that table, draw out sketches. It's a great place for students to come together and just get their ideas out and be able to collaborate and think together. We also put in an element that I think is really, really important for a lot of students. In this space, when students came in, their final projects were going to be presented to authentic audiences, which can be very scary for students. And so down in the left corner, we have these two soft seating little couches, little nooks that were put in there to be very intentional to help students be able to build up their intellectual safety level. So a student could work on his or her project, maybe pull a friend over into that little nook and say, hey, can I, go over this with you before I have to present it to my authentic audience so I can get some feedback, so they could feel comfortable with a friend. And then they could be pulled even closer together if that student chooses, okay, now I want to present it to maybe 3 of my friends so that I can get feedback. So that space was built to be very intentional to support students' intellectual safety. So every element that we put in, we want to make sure that we're supporting students and what your goals are for the students. Here's another idea for a space, for a maker space. So instead of having monitors at the end, they had the luxury of having smart boards. And so students can sit down there at the tables and chairs with their team and design together up on the smart board, project their presentation up on there to get feedback and ideate and continue to work together. And at times whenever they wanted to just come back and sit in a soft seat and sit on some cushions to just relax and talk. Okay, now we've got a better plan. Now let's go back to our work. So it just really supports that flexibility and that choice and for students to be able to go where they feel comfortable working. So I've shared quite a few ideas with you, and I just want to again say that, again, think about the verbs that you want to see for your students and for your educators within the space, because you'll want to find a solution that matches with all of those verbs that supports that. And as I was saying before, having the storage pieces, and if one of the verbs you have for students is if they can go get what they need right away, there are storage solutions like these up on the screen where students can go, get, grab, make, leave their designs and creations back on the shelf so that they can come back and finish it later. If you're wanting to do a robotics club, there are solutions for holding all the pieces that go with those cool tools. If you're doing a maker space and you want it to be where students can actually get hands-on, you want a pegboard that sends a message of being able to hold all the tools, then there are solutions for that. As we're seeing more and more 3D printers go into schools, you'll want to have a space that doesn't, and a piece of furniture that doesn't take up too much space, that you can hold it there, and then all the plastic rings, of course. Every storage unit and every size bucket you could need is out there and able to be put into schools and designed for however big or small you need it to be. So I hope I've been able to share some cool ideas for some creative spaces that really foster that creativity and innovation and collaboration we hope to see within our students to reach our ultimate goal, which is to help our students be able to thrive in whatever they choose to do with their lives. Spaces like this and programs like this can really help us to recruit families to our schools as we want to have a bigger impact on students' lives and families' lives. So I hope you've enjoyed our webinar on modern spaces. Here are just a couple of deliberate actions you might consider. Number one, you might just do a little informal assessment as you walk around your current school. What do your current spaces say? What is the message they say and send to all stakeholders? And if you enjoyed this webinar and you feel that a colleague or someone else on your campus might want to see and check out some of the designs, please feel free to share this webinar with them. If you'd like more questions, or if you'd like me to answer any questions, feel free to just directly message me on Twitter if you'd like to. If you'd like more information or want to have a more detailed conversation, feel free to contact Sebastian Sanchez, and there is his email address up on the screen. I thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'm very passionate about being able to help our students and be able to help you achieve your goals for all your students. So I hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.